my house and I get in and out of it if I want.
It's ridiculous.
Good evening.
Strewn with burnt-out shops and vehicles, the RUC facing a barrage of criticism and the peace process under greater strain than ever before.
A car was hijacked. Before we take you through the day's events, there have been reports of trouble in Enniskillen, Derry, Strabane, Pomeroy, Newton Butler and Keady. A car was hijacked and set on fire during sporadic rioting this evening in the Short Strand and Mount Pottinger areas of East Belfast. Several petrol bombs were thrown at the security forces, who responded with plastic bullets. But passing police and army patrols continue to come under attack, on this occasion a petrol bomb failing to ignite.
Earlier today, the focus of attention was on the Lower Ormo, where police had sealed off the area to allow orange men to pass through. Residents complained they'd been imprisoned in their own homes. Mervyn Jess reports.
Saturation policing in the Lower Ormo. The aim to get the Balnafie Orange Lodges through this mainly nationalist area. 12 hours before the parade even began, all side streets were sealed off, keeping the local people off the main road.
I feel really disgusted and very, very angry. They try to treat us like animals, but let me tell you, we're not animals, you know. Like, we're human beings with rights, no matter what the Orange Order and the RUC think.
As the parade time drew near, the tension rose and the cordon tightened. Those who managed to make it onto the road were quickly removed.
Is there no right to protest here? Is there no right to democratic protest?
Minutes later, the controversial parade crossed the Ormo Bridge and marched into the mainly nationalist area. Police and riot gear prepared for missiles being thrown, but the protest was noisy, not violent, as those opposed to the parade peered through the window of riot shields. In a few minutes, the orange demonstration was over, in stark contrast to the overnight security operation mounted around it. The Lower Ormo Concerned Community Group condemned the RUC's actions.
We saw resolute RUC action in 2 cases only. Once to beat the poor people off Garvaghey Road, and yesterday and today to seal this area for 15 hours so that that parade could be accommodated in this road. We feel that that's a devastating message for the nationalist community.
The area remained cordoned off this evening for the return of the Balnafie Lodges, who marched along the embankment and across the bridge. The protesting residents ended their day where they began it, on the other side of the RUC Land Rovers.
Well, after the police decision to allow the Orangemen down Garvaghey Road, Cardinal Daly said it had been a black day for Northern Ireland. The state had been seen to capitulate to loyalist violence, and he said the consequences could be calamitous. Cardinal Daly had been involved in negotiations in Portadown along with the Church of Ireland Primate Archbishop Robin Eames, who joins us now from Armagh. Archbishop Eames, your counterpart being quite uncertain in his language there, calamitous, he thinks, the decision at Garvaghey. Would you go along with that?
I have to say all the events of this week have been not only disastrous for the image of Northern Ireland outside our borders, but they have brought to the surface, Conor, that which cannot be divided or separated from the events of Drumcree or anywhere. The underlying suspicion, the underlying fears, and the underlying sense of crisis in identity, which is really what is happening in this province. And once the anger has died, once the emotions of this moment have gone, we've got to stop trying to analyse the past, and we've got to look forward. Where do we go from here? And I believe there's enough good sense, despite all that's happening, to build on what we have experienced and say, look, in God's name, we can't allow this to happen again next year.
Well, OK, fair enough, but so much stems from that decision at Garvaghey. And as I said there, you and the Cardinal were involved behind the scenes in negotiations, and suddenly there's a decision, it seems, out of the blue that catches both you and the Cardinal completely by surprise. Now, that's very insulting from your point of view, isn't it?
We were totally independent of any of the agencies that have been mentioned today, the police, the Northern Ireland Office, anyone. All we were concerned with in those negotiations and in those attempts to get our way through were the people of Garvaghey Road and the Orange Order. We had got over several major obstacles. We had made a start. We were simply looking at procedure. We had set our agenda not in terms of any particular time, but in terms of sitting it out until we had got some light at the end of the tunnel.
But time was of the essence, Archbishop, wasn't it?
As you know, something overtook it, and we had to abandon it at that point.
Well, Mr. Hughes said there was absolutely no give and take whatsoever on either side. You don't go along with that. You think there was a compromise possible, do you?
I always hope that there's a compromise possible, and I've reason to believe the will is there to find a compromise. What we have got to do is to respect the genuine feelings on both sides, because we do understand what those feelings are, and I can understand why the people, both Protestant and Roman Catholic, Unionist and Nationalist, do feel as they do tonight.
OK, Archbishop, thank you very much indeed.
Well, now let's take a look at some of the main Orange demonstrations across the province today. At the biggest parade in Belfast, the Ulster Unionist leader David Trimble took the opportunity to launch a scathing attack on the Chief Constable's handling of this week's Drumcree standoff. Mark Armstrong reports.
Around 250 lodges marched through Belfast today with the help of about 130 bands. Guests included brethren from Scotland and the Irish Republic, and among the local marchers were Grand Master the Reverend Martin Smith and the Ulster Unionist leader David Trimble. After the traditional wreath-laying at the cenotaph in the city centre, the parade set off for the field in Edenderry, now accompanied by Ballinafie District No. 10, who'd earlier been allowed to march down the Lower Ormeau Road. Rooting arguments out of the way, at least for the time being, the parade headed up Bedford Street along the Lisbon Road to Balmoral Avenue and finally along Malone Road to the field. Once assembled, the crowd heard the three resolutions of loyalty, state and faith, as well as a cutting attack by David Trimble on the Chief Constable's original decision not to let the Orange Order march down Gavahi Road.
One of the problems in the RUC is not just the incompetence of Hugh Annesley, and Hugh Annesley hasn't just been incompetent at Drumcree, he's been incompetent in a number of things. And over the years he's surrounded himself with a clatter of yes men. And so when he came to take his decision, I'm sure all the yes men said yes.
But the mood of the parade and supporters was generally good-natured, and the organisers declared it a successful day.
The homeward journey is a good indication. Last year there was a tremendous crowd, and I would expect probably a bigger crowd this year on the way home.
After the speeches, the parade marched back to the city centre by the same route.
Tandragee was the venue for the County Armagh parade, the biggest outside Belfast. The town had been virtually cut off for most of this week, heavily blockaded by loyalists in support of the Drumcree Orangemen. And these were the very men whose actions led to the protests. Portadown District No. 1 received the warmest welcome from the crowd. The events of the past week overshadowed today's celebrations. Many of those marching today were involved in the Drumcree standoff. By the time they reached the field, they were tired and subdued.
We could have been in a very different situation this afternoon, possibly in the middle of a bloodbath, still at Drumcree.
Echoing the words of their unionist political leaders, the County Armagh Orangemen showed their contempt for Sir Hugh Annesley.
We have no confidence in him, and the sooner he leaves this province and gets out and hands over to the leadership of a good Ulsterman, the sooner the better.
However, Orange Order leaders were in reflective mood, saying there'd been enough recrimination this week.
I would say that today is not a day for inflammatory speeches. We wish to examine the situation, and we need cool heads and clear thinking.
The Orange Order says it intends to conduct an in-depth review of this week's events and is keen to find a lasting solution to the problem of contentious parades.
As the DUP leader attended the demonstration of the independent Loyal Orange Institution in Laugharne, he called for the Chief Constable to resign after reversing his decision to ban Orangemen at Drumcree from marching down Gavahi Road.
His decision was mad. It led to folly, and it led to the sort of scenes that we have had, and I condemn every act of violence that took place, but that was incited by the folly of the Chief Constable.
Earlier, Dr. Paisley had been invited to join members of the Independent Orange Institution in their parade through the town, even though he doesn't belong to the order. At the demonstration field at Inver Park, he claimed that Sir Hugh Annesley had mounted a war against the Unionist population and intended to use the police as pawns. 5-year-old Aaron McLean, however, paid little heed to the day's political messages. 4 generations of his family belonged to the Order's Ballinagavie Lodge and Band near Ballymoney.
We used to go round the roads, collect money, vote for mail if we don't do that now.
The Independent Orange Institution was founded 93 years ago after some of the Orange Order's members left in protest at its political affiliations.
It's 3 years since the last 12th in Coleraine, and today thousands came out for the demonstration. The host district is McCoskin, but because the village is too small, 75 lodges and the same number of bands converged on Coleraine. Lodges from the north of the county were represented, from Limavady, City of Londonderry and East Donegal. After a parade through the town, the Orangemen held their traditional religious service. The East Londonderry MP spoke at length about Drumcree and loyalist violence. He said those who wrecked and burned weren't Orange Order members. He was also highly critical of the Chief Constable's original ban.
I think Hugh Annesley should certainly consider his position. He's going anyway. I'm very sorry that he's going under the cloud that he has created for himself.
The MP said he believed a framework for future parades could be easily arranged, but would probably prove unworkable because of Republican attitudes.
The demonstration in Fermanagh is amongst the most traditional and non-contentious, but many of those walking in Kesh today were in Drumcree earlier this week. Officials admitted there had been events during the week the order was not proud of. Incidents in Fermanagh were isolated and few and included attacks by nationalists.
Unfortunately, last night, my shop in Lisnaskea had their windows broken, as well as about 10 other Protestant shops on the main street. The windows were broken and we were called out to this at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I can't see that that will do anybody's cause any good.
But the order in Fermanagh is concerned about the current situation, even if tension there has not been as high as elsewhere.
I don't think it's had a great effect here in Fermanagh, but I think it's a very sad day for Northern Ireland. And things have gone badly wrong, and it will be very expensive, not only in the financial sense, but in world opinion.
At the field today, there were prayers for the family of Michael McGoldrick, the Catholic shot dead in Lurgan this week. And there was 2 minutes silence to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme.
Officials in Tyrone say around 3,500 brethren took part in today's demonstration. It was headed by officers from the Killyman district. Orangemen and their bands from 6 surrounding districts made the 2-mile trek to the field on the Moneymore Road. It was 2.5 hours before they'd all made it there. Speeches from the platform reflected the week's events.
All of us here would wish to join with the many voices in condemning not only the Chief Constable for making such a decision and for putting his officers through the week that they have just had, but also condemn the thuggery, intimidation and destruction.
Another speaker urged the Orange leadership to take a firm stand against what's seen as the pan-nationalist front.
We should be assured that this institution will take a stand against every strand of the pan-nationalist front that is ranged against us. It is only with determined and committed leadership that we will finally seal victory.
The mood in Cookstown has been somewhat subdued. There appears to be relief that Drumcree is finally over and the 12th can go ahead in relative normality.
So, some of the highlights there of today's demonstrations, but how does that atmosphere square with the tense standoff between Orangemen and police at Drumcree throughout much of the week? Well, joining us now is the Reverend Martin Smith, who's Grand Master of the
12th. And now a look at some of today's main demonstrations across Northern Ireland.
We have a lot of repair work to do. We have to work hard in the months that lie ahead to restore the image that this institution has.
In Belfast Orange Hall this morning, an acknowledgement of the damage done to the image of the Order this week. Meanwhile, Orangemen from Sandy Row were making their way across the city to Carlisle Circus. Each year, a different district is given the honour of leading the parade, and number 5 is known as the Pride of Belfast.
Anybody should be out celebrating because it was a day for civil and religious liberty for all. Remember, William's army, there was as many Roman Catholics in William's army as there was Protestants.
I have worked with Roman Catholics
and they used to come down from Britain's Parade and Beachmount to watch me walking, and in fact they used to gag me about, it's as well you have ears to keep your hat from falling down.
As the thousands of marchers began the long journey to the field at Edenderry, a reminder of the depth of feeling over Drumcree. Making their way towards the city centre, Orange men passed screens on one side of the road, and on the other, not the embers of an 11th night bonfire, but evidence of last night's rioting in nationalist areas of Belfast.
The bottom line was that people in Northern Ireland were fed up with a diet of apparent concession and surrender to IRA terrorism. And that's what they saw Drumcree as being.
But it doesn't solve the problem, does it, long term?
No. And that problem will have to be addressed.
But not right now, because when the band starts playing, you must move off or you get left behind. The streets of Belfast were lined with thousands of spectators, some hastily producing their own slogans in the light of recent events. A short service at the Cenotaph to remember the dead of 2 world wars and the Troubles, and special emphasis this year on the 36th Ulster Division, which fought at the Battle of the Somme 80 years ago this month. Such were the losses in the early days of the battle that the 12th of July processions in Belfast in 1916 were cancelled. The Grand Master was speaking in Ballymena today, but this morning the Reverend Martin Smith joined brethren in Belfast. Didn't this week put a cloud over the day's events?
The biggest shadow was cast by the slogan on the high-rise apartments at Victoria Barracks, where those who claim that we're sectarian have the slogan, Drumcree Church will burn.
So what do you see as the long-term solution? I mean, it's over now for this year, but the problem hasn't gone away.
Well, we've got 12 months to try and sort something out, so hopefully that we don't have the same scenes repeated next year. I hope those 12 months will be well spent.
From the air, you can clearly see how the parade snakes its way through the city streets, along the Lisburn Road and onto the outskirts. While many take the walk seriously, there are those who are happy to introduce a little lightheartedness. Like, what does a Scotsman really wear under his kilt? Modesty prevents me from saying. Even these prize-winning horses are on parade today, pulling a coach which has been a regular fixture in the Belfast procession since 1901. Once at the field, a chance to sit down and relax, and hear the Ulster Unionist leader David Trimble deliver the keynote address, taking as his theme, once again, Portadown.
And we've seen that time and time again throughout our history in the last decade, 2 decades, where government has taken the easy way out by pushing around those who are law-abiding and loyal in order to appease those who threaten violence and are disloyal. When the bit comes to the bit, the people of Northern Ireland, the British people of Ulster, for whom this institution provides the backbone, that those people will determine what happens here. Thank you.
The biggest parade outside of Belfast took place at Tandragee, which staged the County Armagh demonstration. There, Portadown Orange men were applauded as they passed by the huge crowd of onlookers. Conor Macaulay reports.
The last time the 12th was held in Tandragee in 1985, the Portadown Orange men didn't make it. Then they were embroiled in the Oban Street rerouting controversy. For a time this year too, it seemed the same thing might happen. So when Portadown's 32 lodges began parading past, the large crowd greeted them with sustained applause. The District Master of Portadown, Harold Gracie, acknowledged the clapping, but the order is keen not to repeat what some saw last year as inappropriate triumphalism. He declined to speak about the events of yesterday. In all, 167 lodges from 11 districts, accompanied by 100 bands, walked the mile-long route from the assembly point at the head of the town to the field, watched by close to 20,000 spectators. As well as the bands, the Lambegs too were out in force, more than 120 of them on the march today. For a time, it seemed the County Armagh demonstration might end up at Drumcree. Those in charge at Tandregee had only 24 hours' notice that it would go ahead here, barely long enough to clear the roadblocks that had shut the town down and get things ready. From the platform at the field, there were the customary motions on loyalty and faith. There were prayers for the safe passage of the Balnafie Brethren along the Lower Ormeau Road. Drumcree too merited a mention.
We could have been in a very different situation this afternoon, possibly in the middle of a bloodbath, still at Drumcree. But thankfully, as a praying people, we acknowledge to Almighty God this afternoon His divine intervention in circumstances, and that we find ourselves here today in this family atmosphere.
Ordinary Orangemen were asked for their views on the events of the last few days.
Sinn Féin got real cocky when they got the 14%. And it was time the Orange, they got every time the government was leaning to the IRA. They got everything they asked for, and it was time the Orange.
Earlier and before the day's proceedings began, the Tandregee district performed a ceremony unique to it. The banners of the area's 21 lodges pulled into a tight circle, followed by a short prayer service and a gesture of solidarity.
Over 30 lodges from the Ballymena district have taken part in their 12th demonstration. As Jane Lockery reports, several lodges travelled from England to join in the celebrations.
Ballymena still bears the battle scars of several nights of rioting. All around the town, there were reminders of the events at Drumcree as the Orangemen took to the streets. The parade was led by the Christian Crusaders and the Grand Master, Martin Smith. Visiting lodges from England were also out in force. The City of London district has been in Northern Ireland for the past week.
We have got established friends in Ballymena, and I feel that you can actually project yourself more in the outlying areas rather than big places like Belfast or Londonderry. So, and we want to basically show the people of Ulster that English people, not just English Orange people, but English people actually care for what's going on in the United Kingdom.
Two lodges, LOL 115 and the Ballymena Golden Star, displayed new banners.
Pikes of Bible and Crown on one side, and Richard Martin Luther and the Anesthesis on the other side, with the small Dan Winter's Cottage above it, and the King William and the Golden Star on the other side.
Hundreds of people lined the streets as over 30 lodges made their way through the town. Some of the crowd appeared a little more sombre than usual.
I think it's a wee bit sombre, than it would have been, because we don't want triumphalism anyway, and that's the way it has to be.
But not everyone agreed.
I think there's a lot more people. I think there's a lot more people joining the Orange Order now and out supporting people that have maybe stayed at home before, have come out in force.
After all the troubles, I think, just, it's made it best and worthwhile.
Matthew Gillen hasn't missed a 12th parade in Ballymena for 76 years.
He's coming 95 in August.
Yet he was still determined to be here.
Very much so, yes. He really looks forward to it.
Once in the field, 3 resolutions were read to the crowd. The first, loyalty to the Queen. The second, commitment to the Protestant religion. And the third, maintaining the union with Britain. Reverend Martin Smith spoke on the third resolution. A large part of his speech was dedicated to the events at Drumcree.
May I say without qualification that the past week need never have happened if those in authority had not misjudged the mood of the people and refused advice. Rather, they continued to dance to a Sinn Féin IRA tune.
Jane Lockery, UTV Live, Ballymena.
70 lodges and bands marched through County Londonderry's biggest parade in Coleraine, where the Ulster Unionist MP Willie Ross continued his party's criticism of the RUC Chief Constable Sir Hugh Annesley. Mark McFadden reports.
After a difficult week for the Orange Order, there was relief among the marchers in Coleraine that the hurdle of Drumcree had been surmounted. March organisers said they wanted to celebrate with a dignified parade without any overt triumphalism. The 12th hasn't been staged in Coleraine since 1993, and hosting the event today with the McCoskin district from just outside the town. A heavy burden for the main organiser.
Well, there's been quite a lot of organising. We have City of Londonderry with us, the lodges from Donegal, Limavady district, Coleraine district, McCoskin district. About 70 lodges are here today with their bands.
But how many people do you think have taken part and watched the parade?
I would say about 20,000 would be here today. That's just a rough figure.
At the end of the week that it has been, it's obviously a good day for the Orange Order here.
It is indeed. We give thanks to God that God has been good to us, and we would certainly hope that in the days that lie ahead that our institution will go from strength to strength.
The parade moved off at noon from Railway Street, with thousands thronging Coleraine streets. The parade was led by the banner of Limavady District No. 6, with the honour of being the leading band, falling to the Moyne Pipe Band from Donegal. The march snaked its way through the city centre, past a town hall recently refurbished after being destroyed in a massive IRA bomb blast several years ago. And younger spectators got into the spirit of the occasion, putting on a show of their own. Eventually, the parade moved onto the old bridge and across the River Bann and up towards the field on a hill overlooking the town. There, local MP Willie Ross renewed old acquaintances and gave us his views on the week's events.
If there was a week in which criticism was directed at the Orange Order, I must say it was ill-directed, because in all truth the one person who was responsible for this was the Chief Constable of the RUC, who displayed appallingly poor judgment in trying to prevent public disorder.
Violence, as we all know, has resulted from the incidents on the Gravahi Road, including 3 policemen being shot. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that this illustrates that there has never been a real ceasefire, that the IRA, as Jerry Adams said, hasn't gone away, that it is still an armed and dangerous and murderous conspiracy, and that it intends to use weaponry as and when the opportunity occurs.
Mark McFadden for UTV Live at the 12th in Coleraine.
In Newry, the proposed route of one lodge through a nationalist estate was blocked by a crowd of around 200 residents. Stones and other missiles were thrown and police replied by firing plastic bullet rounds. The lodge then took another route to join the main parade. Pamela Ballantyne reports.
In Newry this morning, residents from the nationalist Camloch Road estate blocked the intended route of Altnavay Lodge. Stones and other missiles were fired and police replied with baton rounds. No more than 30 band members passed over the bridge, and on the advice of the police, they chose not to pass through the estates. The residents claimed a victory for rerouting. However, a band spokesman said with the new road, the lodge had always intended to keep their options open as to which route to take. The parade in Newry itself was led off by the Altnavay Pipe Band. There were over 5,000 marchers from around 100 lodges in Newry, Lower Ivey, Rathfryland, Banbridge, Loch Brickland, Guildford, Ban Valley and Carlingford Loch. In spite of being a predominantly Catholic town, the atmosphere was relaxed and jovial. The morning's trouble seemed a long time ago. But onlookers were concerned about what happened at Garvachy Road.
They should have been allowed to walk and home, and that's it. Well, I was behind what the Orange men stood for, but not the vandalism.
Well, I think the Chief Constable made an abominable mistake, so he did. And when he tried to redo the damage that he had done, he doubled the damage then. He should never have made the decision in the first place. He knew what was going on, and in my opinion, he was politically motivated to do it. That would be my opinion.
I think there should have been that march saying it was hymns that they were singing, you know, that it was nothing
wrong, like, you know.
The parade circled part of the town before making its way to the field on the Belfast side of Newry. The resolutions were read by the County Grand Master of Down, who says he's disappointed at the earlier protests by residents.
I think we have to make plans for next 12th. We don't envisage any problems. I would love to see where people everyone can recognise others' cultures. We have a culture here, and it can't be pushed to one side. We have our own culture, and I think other people should learn to recognise that.
This is Pamela Ballantyne, UTV Live, Newry.
Our final report this evening is from the Fermanagh demonstration, and Jeannie Johnston was there.
The picturesque village of Kesh today welcomed Orange men and women from 16 districts throughout the county. 90 lodges, accompanied by bands, marched the winding route from Ederney Road through the village to the field at Crevenish Road. Fermanagh has close links with other border counties north and south. Today, a dozen lodges travelled across the border from Cavan, Donegal and Monaghan. It was a dog's life for some, but the spectators had the advantage of fine weather and fine music.
Well, now, before we go, an update on the link.